Well, hello everyone. Welcome to What's Next, today's show. We're going to be talking about fringe festivals and how they've adapted and changed since March. Very excited today because we got some experts in the field, of course, and I'd like to welcome our two people. Let me get them out here. Lindsay Taylor and Alex Petty, thank you so much for coming. Alex, you've been running the Laughing Horse over at Edinburgh. You could do shows in Australia, and you've been running the Free Fringe Festival at the Edinburgh Fringe, which, as I recall, in 2019, you had filled over 20 venues with 9,000 performances of 400 shows. Mind blowing.
Well done for remembering all that. Thank you for inviting me on that.
Wonderful. And Lindsay Taylor, you're joining us from the Orlando International Fringe Festival. You've been a producer there, associate producer, performer. You've kind of worn many hats throughout the years of the Orlando Fringe. So thank you.
Thank you for having me
today. Yay. All right. So let's jump into it. Let's remember a long time ago in the before times when life was wonderful. We could enter our venues freely. Alex, can you give us a little idea about, you've been doing this for years and years, kind of what was your normal, this time of year, what you would be doing?
This time of year, I would be absolutely neck deep in the Edinburgh Fringe at the moment. As you said, last year we had over 20 venues. We would have been running around about the same this time. Pretty much producing my own shows, mostly comedy shows, but also looking after the festival as a whole. Spread around Edinburgh, pretty much shows from 9 o'clock in the morning with kids shows right the way through till late night comedy at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and theatre, cabaret, and everything else in between. So yeah, usually this is a very hectic time of the year for me.
That's great. And Lindsay, you guys, the Orlando Fringe, is it in April or May?
It's the last 2 weeks of May.
Last 2 weeks of May, and then you also have a winter fringe, correct?
Yeah, it's about 4 days in the first or second week of January, depending. This year will be the 7th through 10th.
Okay, so what does your fringe kind of normally look like in May?
Sure. We have about 100 festival managed shows with about 30 BYOV shows. All of our venues are in the same sort of area. It's called Lock Haven Park. It's a cultural park in the middle of downtown Orlando. We have 11 venues, about 8. This year we were going to have about 870 performances total. And then we also have site-specific shows as well, about 5 to 6 of them per year. So
that's great. And so both you guys, large festivals, and you have talent coming from all over the world. Is that correct?
That's right, yes.
So there's a big international component and everybody coming in and the community all comes out. Well, we had mid-March hit and a lot of things changed. A lot of venues closed. Lindsay, you were one of the first festivals that were scheduled to go up during this time. And let's just kind of look a little bit. What we're really wondering is what's next? What happened after that? Tell us how you guys pivoted.
Sure. Obviously, as word of the coronavirus started to spread and, we kept getting more and more information about it, we went from like, okay, let's have like an abbreviated version of this particular schedule. And then it was like, okay, I don't know if we're going to be able to do much at all. And then like 3 days later, it was like, and now we have to cancel because we were approaching deadlines where we would have lost a lot of money had we gone through with some of the purchases, like our program and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And with at the time of cancellation, we were limited to groups no bigger than 200 people in one space at a time. And that like takes out a large portion of our festival. And we kind of made the choice of canceling it because it didn't look like it was going to get any better at the time. But then about a week after cancellation, we started to think about like what we could do as a replacement to the festival. And that's where Fringe Today kind of started. I was just going to interview some people, do some workshops, and just kind of like have filler time with just different activities during the 2 weeks on Zoom. And then it turned into people asking like, but can I do my show? Can I do like a event for like an hour? And I was like, sure, I've got like a time slot you could fill. And then it turned into 107 different events in the course of 2 weeks live on Facebook and Zoom. So it turned into this huge thing where I was going to be like, let's just do 1 or 2 events at night. But then it turned into this monster in like 3 weeks time. We pulled it together pretty fast.
Wow. So you brought this all together in 3 weeks.
Pretty much from the time that we were really rolling to like getting it all together and organized. It was quick.
That's amazing. And how many days did your online Fringe run versus your traditional Fringe?
It was the same amount. It was 13 days.
13 days. Wow. So you kind of mirrored it as if it was a real Fringe. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we had we had like an opening ceremony and we had a closing ceremony. We invited the mayor and he like did a ribbon cutting even like on his own lawn. Like we had like him have a ribbon and we pretended to cut it with scissors. Like we like tried to make it as authentic and fringy as possible.
That is wonderful. I was lucky. I did catch a few shows, and it was a lot of fun. And missing Fringe, missing live performance in general, it was, as an audience member, really special to be able to get that Fringe feeling. So well done on that. And leading the charge. So we'll get back and talk about the different platforms and technical and kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But Alex, you, on the other hand, you had some warning. And while all venues had this limbo sense of, are we opening, are we not? Things finally reached a point where it looked like the Edinburgh Fringe wasn't going to happen. And what were you working on to pivot that?
That's right. It came at a time where things were quite chaotic for us, as well as Edinburgh. We run and produce shows at the Australian festivals and also the Brighton Fringe in the UK. So pretty much over the course of the week, we'd found out that the Melbourne Comedy Festival was cancelled, which was 2 weeks out. We were at the Adelaide Fringe and Australia went into lockdown the day after that Fringe finished. Brighton Fringe, which is in May in the UK, which we have a much smaller operation at. We run 4 venues, pretty much cancelled around about the same time. Add into that the fun of getting back from Australia to the UK with emergency flights, and pretty much back in the UK. It was looking like Edinburgh was going to get cancelled for about 2 weeks before they made the announcement, so there was time to prepare. But on top of all of that, 1st of April, dealing with the Edinburgh cancellation. Thankfully for Edinburgh, it sounds like we've clearly had a much more relaxed run into things than Lindsay had putting together at Orlando. That sounds like a fantastic job you did there in such a short time. And we followed a very similar process. We had to look at the technology and what we could do. It was clear that performers wanted to do something and we wanted to do something to keep things going. And that's when, through the technology, we just started to slowly look at what we could do and pull together a program of shows. It's a much smaller program. We've gone for a limited number of shows each day, but over the dates we would have been in Edinburgh, August the 7th through till the 30th, we've pretty much got 2 or 3 shows on a day, and that's operated through streaming and Zoom and different models like that, depending on which the performers want to use. That's how it's moved, and we seem to have gone quite well so far. Touch wood.
And likewise, Alex, you kind of followed. You're mirroring what would have been your traditional free festival. So the
Absolutely.
dates, the same time. And for both of you, how many artists that were originally signed up would you say partook in the digital version?
We've got 25 shows plus some guest acts in things like chat shows. So we've probably got about 30 to 35 of the original acts.
Okay.
That would have been out of around about 400 shows. We've not quite finished the programming, but give or take, it would have been around about 400 shows.
Wow. Okay. And Lindsay, how about you?
I don't have an exact number, but I feel like the majority of them were a part of the festival in some way. But there was even a couple people who had never done our festival at all, because we got to a certain point where people would email and be like, "Can I be involved?" And I was like, "Sure." And our Fringe fans love meeting new artists, so it was kind of fun in that way too, because they got to see people that they don't know yet.
Oh, that's very cool. So it kind of opened the door for bringing people who normally wouldn't have been able to do your traditional festival.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So one question that has come up, and it's kind of a bigger topic of this live streaming. Are you, and this is tossed out to both of you, are you having festivals, shows only perform live, meaning like what we're doing now, a live stream that is going straight out to the audience? Or were people videotaping a show live stream and then putting it up? Or were they archive shows from years ago that they put up? How did you kind of curate that type of entertainment?
For us, our aim was to go for live shows. So it's, apart from one show that's got an archive video that we've included, everything is live shows. So it's all going out on the night. It's either streamed or in Zoom or WebEx, a different version of that. But pretty much, yeah, it's all aimed at being live, so it can, as best as possible, get the same atmosphere and feel as what you would get in a live Fringe show.
That's great. Lindsay?
We had a mix. We had live shows. We had some pre-recorded shows that were just like streamed live, like by sharing the screen. And then we also had one show. It was a kids' Fringe show that was like a choose your own adventure type show, which was super cool. And like it was live, but then like I was like the explorer and I had to like pick which way to go, and then they played like a pre-recorded video to take you to that next location. It was cool and very technical. That was beyond me, but I participated and it was fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and that's a good lead into my next question. And I've got some questions coming out there, and I'll get to those. So thank you. Keep those questions coming. One of the big words that people are starting to throw around are platforms, which is what system people are using to stream their system. For an example, right now I'm using StreamYard that lets me bring in guests and share screens and have comments and all that. And everyone refers to this as Zoom. Zoom is kind of the catchphrase for all this kind of online streaming. But there are many more out there, and there are many platforms that people put out. We're putting it out on YouTube and Facebook. Can each of you kind of talk about the technical and get as technical as you want? Part of this is we want people to kind of learn about what people are doing, your platforms and how you're streaming and what services you're using.
Yeah, we're using Streamlabs OBS.
Oh, great.
And that's what we're using to pull in from various sources depending on what the performers are using. For a lot of the shows which we have a setup like this with multiple acts, we're either using Zoom or Cisco WebEx, which is essentially their proprietary version of Zoom. Cisco were very good for us when we were setting things up. They've got contracts with some of our Edinburgh venues, and they did a help with a lot of the technical setup of how we'd get things streaming out there as we were looking into things over April and May. And that's essentially been the setup. That's been nice and versatile, that we can get things out either over YouTube. Twitch has been our main one, but also streaming to Facebook. But I must say, your use of StreamYard here today has been very impressive. It's something I've not seen before, and something I'm definitely going to be looking at as soon as we finish speaking, I think.
That's great. Well, this is about information. Yeah, I've been very happy with StreamYard, but I'm very impressed about hearing Cisco. This sounds like sponsorship and like that nice big level. Did they approach you? Did you approach them? And how have you liked their software?
They were dealing with Three Sisters, one of our major venues in Edinburgh, and the Three Sisters brought them into the conversation to help support what we do and trying to support the artists to get them out there. And they were hugely supportive. They had 2 or 3 people looking into the types of software to use and how their software would work. They've given us accounts with it, so it's one of those sponsorship in kind setup. But they've really given us the background and some professional tools to use. Wow. That's let us get out there. So they're sponsoring all the stuff that we live stream.
That's great. And are you doing the live stream from a venue, or is everybody doing this from home?
It's all from home at the moment, yes. Unfortunately, we were looking at doing some from the Edinburgh venues, But at the time now over here with the various rules and regulations that seem to be changing about every 5 minutes, it's very difficult to do that. Or the actual venues have only just opened in terms of general services rather than anything opening as theatres at the moment. So pretty much is everyone sat at their various homes, although we have got a few shows lined up where there's some performers performing together from homes and having a reasonable setup that makes it look like a theatre.
Wow. Okay. And you guys you're no live shows. I don't know. We have phases here in the States, phase 1, 2, 3. You're still no social distancing at shows.
That's right. We've got outdoor shows at the moment. You do? I think less than 48 hours from being allowed to do indoor shows with social distancing, but they put a stop on that because they're worried about the rates of transmission going back up again. So it's on hold at the moment. So we're allowed to perform outside, and what I think for certainly some of the shows I've seen feels like interrupting people at their picnics outside when someone shouts at them from a distance.
The challenges.
Yeah.
Good. We got a question that's kind of linked into the tech thing, and for Alex specifically, and we'll get to this is from Monica Bauer, a Fringer from many parts of Fringe.
Yes, I remember Monica.
You remember Monica?
Years ago, yes.
Yeah, so we put Democracy Sucks, which is a show she's working on, up on Zoom once. But my New York actor, John Fico, prefers to tape it and put it up on YouTube so we can control it. Since my actors in New York City time zones are an issue, Alex Petty, would you be interested in our show as recorded? It was scheduled for Fritz Suite venues.
Absolutely. No, we're very keen to help any performers with anything that's recorded or people that can look after their own tech for running shows. Then we're very happy to include things on the site and so yeah, Monica, get in contact and we'll have a chat about that over the next couple of days.
It's happening right here, folks. What's next? Deals are being made. It's happening. All right. So, Lindsay, let's talk a little bit about platforms. You mentioned Zoom. Let's talk a little bit about that and what you've been doing with it.
During Fringe today, we use Zoom and Facebook Live, like a combination of the two. We kind of went back and forth at one point as we were trying to figure out what was working best for us. But now we've been doing some monthly online street programming. We had our first Fringe Friday event, which we started last week, where we had two artists present their shows, and we started using StreamYard for that, which I think is what we're going to go with from now on, because it just looks so clean and nice and so well put together. We really enjoy this platform a lot.
Yeah, my favorite thing about StreamYard is we all look like the same orientation on everybody's screen. Whereas Zoom, you may be aware, everybody's screen arranges the squares differently. So it has a much cleaner, professional feeling. And I'll add a little plug to last week's show. Our two guests were talking about streaming and went into a little bit more detail about OBS. Zoom, as you know, Lindsay, pretty straightforward. You send out the link, people set up, little monitoring. OBS takes a bit more effort, Alex. Did you bring in a technical person for that? Did you jump into it? Because it's free, and I should remind you, OBS is free. Zoom, I think, is $15 a month. But OBS, was that challenging for you, Alex, with the OBS?
I've got a fairly good IT background. Before I got into this, I did a lot of IT stuff. So it felt like a challenge because it was something completely new. There's quite a lot of levels to it in terms of how you set it up and how you get the screen set up. But once you've got the various components in place, it's really flexible for being able to include information from other sources, be it if you're sharing presentations or you just want data and things on there. It's a very, very flexible, but it does take a lot more setup, where Zoom is more or less just sort of walk in and use it type thing.
Now, it also came up last week with Zoom, that kind of need for monitors. Lindsay, did you have, what was your team like in order to put together the show?
Yeah, there was 3 of us, myself, our marketing director, Brian Sikorsky, and our development director, Lisa Hart, who were the daily showrunners, who made sure everyone was on time. We ran everything. And then we started to, about 3 or 4 days into it, asking our other staff members if they wouldn't mind being the like the Zoom monitors, just kind of like making sure that like if someone came unmuted to like mute them, or if like someone had a question to like take care of that, because it turned into this monster where like you're trying to answer emails from someone else and watch the event happening on the screen, and then like it's hard to do all those things. But then asking for help with that additional person really was great and gave us like some time as well, because we just all took a day. So like every 3 days we would be like in charge. So that worked out nice for us.
That's great. And it also reminds me of an episode we'll have in the future about the great pivot that stage managers and tech hands are going through. And they're now all becoming streaming wizards, as all of us kind of pivot. How about you, Alex? You mentioned that you're kind of an IT guy and kind of dealt with the OBS, but I mean, you are one man doing all this. What's your team look like?
My team's pretty much looking like me. At the moment, that's yes. With looking at the budgets of things going forward, it's pretty much been slimmed back down to myself. So I'm doing what Lindsay's saying. She's got a few other people doing as well. So sitting there, being in the background, doing all the muting and looking after people in the background of the Zoom calls, which is such an important thing to do. I know 1 or 2 performers that were running their own shows, and they didn't have that offstage person. And it's certainly something that's absolutely required in any of the video conferencing bits of software to look after the audience and choose who can be heard and not heard, and just deal with the general background noise and everything else that goes on in a Zoom call.
There's a employee over at Fringe New York Fringe, Emily Godfrey, and she was calling the stage manager the screen manager. I did an interview a few weeks back. I've given myself the title of screen manager, and I'm like, oh, I love that. So like in my mind now, like the stage manager role is screen manager.
All right, I like that.
I like that as well. That's great.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that whole new phase, this whole new pivot that people are going, kind of learning those new skills and jumping in. It's also very fringy. In terms of people just kind of pitching in, hey, jump on board. I know my 2 monitors, big shout out to Miles and Pam, who are helping me out to keep the chat room going and keeping that all positive. So in terms of a little bit more, I guess, with the, and actually, let me look at the question. Yeah, this kind of came up. We can keep going back to tech, but a question that came up earlier, I mentioned a bit in terms of Alex. Alex, you normally do a free Fringe, and talk a little bit about that process by which how free Fringe works in terms of money and people paying to see the show.
Yeah, in the live show, free Fringe, free festival came about through the costs of Edinburgh getting so high for performers. In Edinburgh, the traditional route is hiring a venue, and the ticket price is being set by the venue being quite high. And when I say traditional, that was traditional back in like 2000, 2001, that era. The problem with that is the amount of rental that's being charged, and pretty much performers are losing a huge amount of money. So between myself and other people, there were various ways to try and make it better for performers, and this is what the idea of the free shows came out of. And essentially it's busking. We don't charge rental for our venues. We charge a very small admin fee, so the performers' costs are much reduced. They don't charge entry, but they put the performance on, and at the end of the show they ask for donations. And that's something we've been able to replicate in sorts on the online shows as well. With the streaming, there's people asking for donations, but we've started to move to a slightly different model, which may be a model we need to move forward with in the live performances when they do start to come back, and that's the pay what you want method. And that's something that's become popular in Edinburgh over the last 4 or 5 years. It's come out of the free shows where people can turn up for a show for free, but they've got option of buying a ticket to reserve a seat in advance. So for our online shows, people get the choice to donate at various levels in advance to get into the Zoom or the WebEx call, and that is essentially a donation up front.
Okay, and so that leads into, and then I'll talk to you, Lindsay, but this leads into a question. Ed Fringe pal Nick Copeland, this is from Pam, said that he often makes decent money in free Fringe from Pass the Hat. Has that held same for the virtual free Fringe? Do you know that yet?
Yes, I mean, that's pretty much what I was saying. But interestingly, who that is that knows Nick Coppin. It's always a worry how many people Nick Coppin knows around the world. Yeah, it's worked pretty much the same. We although we've had to change the hat into the almost putting the hat around beforehand so people can do the donations. We've found with passing the hat around on the live streams at the end, asking people to donate through PayPal. You get some donations, but it's much better to say, look, you're coming in to watch a show. Can you give us a little bit of money to come in and watch the show? And people do that, or they've got the option of a free ticket. But yeah, essentially, it's moved quite well over into online streaming shows.
That's great, Lindsay. Tell us a little bit about the Orlando Fringe model in the before times, and how did that kind of get affected by the COVID times?
Sure. Our ticket prices are anywhere from free to $12 for Orlando Fringe, and the artist sets their price for that, and 100% of the money goes back to the artist. So when we did our Fringe Today virtual festival, we didn't have a set ticket price, but we did have the artists give us their Venmo or Cash App or PayPal links, and we, repeatedly posted it in the chat section as their event was happening, and they were allowed to accept tips, and 100% of the money went back to them for that as well.
Oh, that's great. And how did that kind of, like, to the similar question Pam asked, it may be hard for you to track that, but how did that compare to kind of a traditional Orlando Fringe?
I think it was very similar. I actually sent out a survey after the festival was over to the artists, and I said it was anonymous, and I said, if you're comfortable, please tell me how much you got in tips, just so we could kind of gauge what was happening. I mean, and a good percent got somewhere around the $100 range, and then like it all kind of goes in groups. You get like the 25 to 30, you get like the $100. But then, there was like 5 or 6 shows that got 200 or more, and one show got like $600. So it really was incredible how much people donated to shows.
Yeah, that's actually really good to hear, and I'm finding from artists in general talking about the virtual tip jar that people really understand their plight and are being generous, especially those who are working. And I have to add, and I'm a venue manager too, being affected by all this, it is also nice for these artists who are making this money virtual tip that they don't have many overhead costs. So all that money is going pretty much in their pocket. They're not traveling, they're not paying lodging, they don't registration. So it is kind of a direct to the pocket, which is a nice positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in general, and taking all of this, the tech, the staffing, the money, what challenges, since both of you guys have been dealing with this, what challenges and kind of general tips would you like to share with fringers out there or administrators who are running fringe festivals? I know some fringes are saying, I'm not going to do it, and some are on it. What do you think the challenges are of the fringe that you'd kind of give the tips to?
I think technology is just it's just a huge challenge in general. Like, a lot of people are just used to going in person and buying a ticket and seeing a show, and adding any sort of level of technology, it can be a struggle for some people. Sometimes they just don't have the technology to be watching these shows. And I think it's important to recognize and let your patrons know that we know it's not the same. I think a lot of our pre-marketing for Orlando Fringe today was letting people know it's not going to be the same. It's going to be something special that is different than what you normally expect. So just roll with it and have fun and go in with no expectations, and I think you'll be really happy. And I think when they saw that we acknowledged that it wasn't the same, everyone had a great time and really embraced it, because we weren't trying to hide it. We weren't trying to be like, this is the same. It's not. And I think that's important, to be transparent with people, that we're all learning, we're all figuring it out together. And
you found people got it?
It took a while. the first couple of days, it took a lot of some of our patrons like a while to figure out like where to go, where to look. And we spent a lot of time like directing people, being like, this is the link, here you go, it's right here. But I mean, towards the end, we weren't getting those questions anymore. And the same people were commenting during shows. So we knew that they figured it out. So like we watched people adapt in the course of 2 weeks. And it was something cool to see, especially because we were in the beginning of all of this. So a lot of people had never even used Zoom at that point. So
you were leading the way in terms of people getting used to the online entertainment. That's great. I think that's great. Alex, what's your experience been as you're in the middle of it all?
Absolutely. I can only echo exactly what Lindsay said in terms of audiences. It's been very much the same feeling for myself. And I think it's the same on the performers side of things as well. Partly it's encouraging the performers to embrace what is essentially a new genre. It's an absolute way of doing things. And I'd certainly say to any of the festivals or performers that are wary of doing this, look into it. It's another way for performers and for producers to get the creative output out there. But it is different. It is a different thing. It's presenting. It's a show. It's almost a TV show type thing rather than a stage performance. It can still be interactive, and there's so many ways things can be managed. But it is a new skill set to learn in terms of performance, as well as all the technical things on top of it. But we've certainly found it's worthwhile, and it is something that can keep the festivals and keep the performers going until the time when we're all hopefully back in the theatres again at some point soon.
Okay, nice. And I'll get to that point a little bit later on, but any tips then? I think letting the audience know and all that is a great one. What have you found in terms of the talent you've been working with performers? What do you suggest? We've had a couple questions just, can this show be in this format? Can I do this? What would be your call, your advice to people who are looking to do festivals, of what they should kind of prepare? Are there certain types of shows that work better for the online festival versus a traditional Fringe festival? What's your kind of advice to Fringe performers?
I think at the moment, certainly we've done theatre, we've done stand-up, we've done chat shows. Now I think every type of show can work. I think it's just sitting down and putting the preparation into to see the technology and learn how it can work. Anything that requires feedback from the audience, it's looking at, are you going to get that through comments in a chat room rather than it being live? Are you going to allow some people to talk in the Zoom call, which can have all the issues with feedback and people talking over the audience? There's certainly issues to overcome, but I think pretty much any show can work in this format as long as it's the right software and presented in the right way. And understanding it's not going to be the same as you putting on that show in a theatre. You have got to sit down and put some thought into it. But yeah, I definitely think we just about anything can be done this way, from as I think, theatre, things with casts, stand-up comedy, chat shows, everything. It's certainly a good thing to look into for everyone.
Yeah, and like building off of what Alex just said, treat the different platforms like different stages. Like sometimes, you'll do a show and it's meant for a proscenium stage and not a thrust stage. Whereas like, if I'm on StreamYard, like what Matthew was saying earlier, like you stay in the same windows. So if you're doing a show where you want to interact with other characters, StreamYard is great, but Zoom, everybody sees things in a different way. So it doesn't play off that well. So I think doing that extra research and seeing like what you need as an artist to be successful and what these platforms are offering for you to be successful have to go together. And there are ways to make it work, but there are platforms that will help you more than others.
Yeah, that's a great note. And I just echo actually last week's show that part of the fun as an artist is to play with those platforms. And this is an opportunity, as Alex said, too, that this is all new. This is new technology. Let's work with it and play with it. At the same time, did you find, like, what about the warning to actors about their tech, like connecting your Ethernet and good lighting? Are you guys taking special care to kind of work with the talent to get their home studio up to par?
Absolutely, yeah. Some of the very basic things about being lit from the front and not having windows at the back and those things, which I don't think people naturally think about when they're sitting in their living rooms doing whether it's standing up and performing or sitting in a chair and performing. So yeah, we tend to have done one or two dress rehearsals, as it were, through the video conferencing beforehand, and just take the time to try and explain it. We've got sort of info sheets and things like that try and explain the technology and how a room is best set up, and the ways you can do things to make it as good as possible, which is never going to be perfect, but also reassuring the performers that audiences for shows over the internet have been, and I think will be, very forgiving, because they understand it's a difficult situation. So try and relieve a little bit of that stress of the performing as well, that everyone's keen to make it as perfect as the last time they were standing on stage, but it doesn't have to be that. You want to aim for it, but people are forgiving that it is going to be a little rough around the edges, and people aren't going to know what to do with the mute button and so on and so forth every now and then.
Yeah, it became like a running bit during Fringe today of like one of our hosts would like go to talk and like we'd be muted, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is day 10. Like, when are we going to remember that? All the Fringe fans were like, Lindsay, every time we turn on the camera, you're like this, being like, sorry guys, I gotta like just watch me unravel.
Well, it's good practice for your Winterfest. Are you guys going to do a Winterfest, Lindsay? Because you guys normally do a winter festival, right?
Yep. Right now at 3:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are planning on trying to do it in person, but it could change at any moment. But yeah, from January 7th through 10th is our current dates for that.
Okay, so if that goes online, you're going to have the skills, a little more skills under your belt to keep it going. And it is something, I think you're right, Alex, that people are forgiving. But that was brought up by Mr. Peter Michael Marino. It's important to have the professionalism and theater ethics and theater element of that.
Absolutely.
And the tech practices are good, always working to get better, get those Ethernet cables and really set the standard. Because, you know, everybody's been talking about, oh, this show was terrible, oh, the tech was bad. We need to elevate it in terms of this as a new art form.
Yes, absolutely. No, things have to be done as professionally as possible, and then people believe in it.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, if you get, like, for example, like our very first day, we had like live music being played, and one of our artists like sent me an email and said, hey, I found this article where like it would help them adjust their audio settings to make it sound better on Zoom. And you know, you get in that festival mode where maybe you don't check every single email, but I happened to, and I was like, oh, this is super helpful. So I immediately copied and pasted and sent it to all the acts that I knew had live music in their festival for the rest of the run. And I said, do these settings on your Zoom before you, so I think, like, you know, accepting help enthusiastically is super important too. That definitely helped our artists a lot, especially with those live music shows, which are tricky online if you don't have the proper equipment, which most people don't.
Yeah, that's an excellent comment. It actually brings up something I wasn't even thinking of. First off, please send me that link if you have that article, because I'd love to share that with our audience. And one of the reasons I started What's Next is, as I talked to individuals, this sense of needing to share this information was so valuable. I called Alex several months ago asking what was going on, and we were all like, what camera, what system? I mean, like, that shared knowledge. Are you finding during these times you're reaching out, is there a communication going between the different fringes or the different venues that maybe didn't really exist to that level as before, or maybe just kind of pivoted, as it were, to now in terms of communication and sharing ideas between the producers?
Yes, there's been a lot of conversations and emails backwards and forwards, and sharing information on how people are doing things, both with other festivals that we work with, the Edinburgh Fringe organisers themselves, and other venues that are putting on a lot of live stuff at the moment.
Yeah, and all of our CAF and Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals and USAF, we've been meeting as well. CAF meets every week. USAF has been meeting every couple of weeks and just kind of comparing ideas. I know I've met with Hartford Fringe, Great Salt Lake Fringe, Kansas City Fringe, like have several had meetings with me and their team because they reached out after our festival because we were the first one. And they were like, can you meet with our team and tell them what you did to help us? And I was like, sure. Like, that's why we're here. Like, fringes aren't a competition. We're here to help each other. So like, I actually had it was a lot of joy for me to like meet with their teams and get to know them and also just help them because it's confusing and no one really knows what they're doing.
No, everyone is just making it up as they go along, which is very fringe in itself.
Yeah, it does have that fringe feeling. I'm also, Lindsay brought up some great organizations. CAF, the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals. There is also the World Fringe organization and the U.S. Fringe organization, as well as the Edinburgh Fringe. I will have all those links put up in our comments. So if you come back and check out the video, you can click here and get an idea. If you're a Fringe festival, maybe lock in and kind of join the association. And if you're not a Fringe festival and you're an artist or an audience, a lot of these sites are listing fringe festivals that are going on. I saw Paris Fringe is about to go online. I think Minnesota Fringe either just wrapped. Tampa Fringe. Any other, Lindsay? Do you know?
Minnesota just ended.
Okay.
Tampa Fringe is ending on Saturday. And then the only one I really know otherwise is happening right now is applications for Hartford Fringe is still happening until August 15th, and they're in October.
Okay, and that obviously is for an online fringe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Let's go to a question. I've got one for Alex from Mr. Michael Blaha.
Michael.
Wonderful fringe producer in Edinburgh and Hollywood. So, Alex, do you know anything about the new YouTube channel for fringe comedians set up by the Talent Bank production company, Sasha Bobak?
I must have absolutely no idea about that one. I can't be any help at all there.
All right, well,
that's a new one on me as well.
Yeah, I will toss out. It's not a talent bank, but I saw another rumor of this about, and I don't know, Lindsay, Alex, you may have heard about this in one of the Fringe meetings. It's a Fringe cable TV channel. There will actually be a cable channel showing high definition fringe shows. And that's something that's becoming around. I'm hoping to get one of the producers of that on the show. But again, we're experimenting with this new form. And it's kind of exciting, to see what the possibilities. What have been some of the unexpected surprises, like benefits that you have seen that you wouldn't have seen from a traditional fringe show? In terms of access, message, whatever. Any benefits you've seen that are new?
I think, at least for us, there's almost the benefit of time, whereas like you're not kicking someone out of a venue because, we were a pretty strict schedule, but like, you have time to like talk to the artist afterwards. I think there's like an access that you don't normally get unless you approach them afterwards at the beer tent, but I think like we had the opportunity to present lots of Q&As and just time face to face with these people that you may have seen their shows for years and years. We have a lot of veteran performers at Orlando Fringe, but I think a lot of people got to know them a little bit better, and I think that's cool. There's that screen, that separation sometimes makes people brave and more willing to connect than in person. They get shy,
Oh, that's a great. Yeah, there is a real connection element with this.
I'd like to echo that as well. That's been the same with us, without having to have the manic 15-minute turnarounds between shows and people running in and out of venues, given a lot more time with a smaller program to spend time with the performers, and also performers that wouldn't necessarily be able to be in Edinburgh. And are doing their shows from. You mentioned Peter Michael Marino a few times. He's doing shows with us, broadcast from his apartment in New York. We've got Craig Shanak from LA doing his show next week, and he can be there and be part of the festival, even though he can't travel, and may well not have been able to get over anyway in August, even if COVID haven't happened. So it's made the world a bit smaller and helped us to keep connections with performers that have worked with us over the years.
That's great. What about audiences? Are you finding that, theater sometimes can be very challenging to get butts and seats? Are you finding like this is opening up the number of people that are coming to see the shows?
I think we've certainly found, because there's so many other things going on at the same time, there's still the challenges to get the numbers on seats. We've had pretty good audiences for a lot of the shows, but we're competing against a lot of other venues that are doing the Edinburgh stuff at the same time. And this also seems to be, certainly in the UK, we're also competing with the summer, and there's enough places that are open to take people into bars or want to be outside as they've come to the end of lockdown. So there's quite a big competition. But on the other side of that as well, we are seeing audiences join in from all over the world to see some shows. So that opens it up that much further, that people can take part, but they can also watch people that have come in from America, Australia, as well as people that are from the UK. So it's opened the whole thing up a lot more.
Nice.
Alex, I just want to add that I was supposed to be coming from America in real life on Tuesday to Edinburgh for the first time ever, and I'm so sad. So it was like appropriate that we were all in this interview together, because I was like,
absolutely.
There.
Yeah. It was your first year of coming over to Edinburgh yourself last year, wasn't it, Matthew? And I know you were looking very keen to come back again this year.
Absolutely, I was keen. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it. So I actually just got accredited as a producer for the Ed Fringe. So I'll be going to some of the events and some of the online, which I really like you were saying, that connecting to people with Fringe, like those events. But Lindsay, I feel for you. It is, I know, as a veteran Fringer, Adelaide is kind of the mecca. Hollywood Fringe. I'm going to go through all of them. The Edinburgh Fringe is kind of the mecca of the Fringe world. So next year we'll all drink. What do we all meet over at the Free Sisters, and we'll have a pint.
Yeah, have a pint at 3 o'clock in the morning somewhere, where everyone hangs out drinking and talking art until dawn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And my bag's packed.
We got a little sad face icon there. People commiserating about this, and a few other comments I want to bring out. Emily Payton, there is also the World Fringe Festival that someone started unrelated to the World Fringe, the organization. So Emily, if you want to send me that link at what's next at combinedartform.com, I can put that information up. Speaking of Peter Michael Marino, Orlando did a great job with scheduling, created a feeling of community for both the performers and the audience. There's a little shout out, and he also gives a little shout out to Craig Shanak. Nice is that. I saw one more here. Oh, and this is kind of a good general. And this may not apply so much to you guys. You guys are midstream. Maybe it will. But maybe you talk about how you did this year. How can people send shows to your festivals? What's kind of your process for
that? Well, at the moment, we can still accept some shows that are able to essentially produce themselves online. We've got until the end of the month. So it's unlikely to be a huge number, but we can take some additional shows. We're looking at the future in teaming up more with Brighton Fringe, which has been rescheduled for October. Now there is meant to be a live element of that, but we're at the stage where we're not knowing what's going on at the moment with live performance. So there is going to be an online element, which we're definitely going to be taking part in. And then we're going to be starting the process at the end of the year of hopefully looking at the live performance for coming back for Edinburgh and the festivals next year. Please.
So I just want to we're all praying. What's Brighton Fringe going to be? Are they thinking of doing social distancing shows?
Yes. Brighton Fringe originally should have been in May, and it was postponed to October. And they're looking at doing social distance shows as long as the laws come in that let us do those, which is the bit that was going to be passed but is now somewhat up in the air. They're certainly looking at doing outdoor shows. One of the venues in Brighton, the Warren, has set up a venue on the beach that are running regular shows comedy wise at the moment, so I guess that's going to lead into the Fringe. Live shows and online at the same time, hopefully. We are desperately hoping we're going to get some socially distanced shows happening by October.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. And talk about little tech fun there.
I thought you managed there for a second.
Yes, I'm really very excited about the idea of social distancing shows, and that's really exciting to hear that Brighton's looking to do that. Yay, Team Brighton. I do want to add for your festival. I'm going to put up your website for anybody who's interested in sort of subscribing maybe for the Brighton Festival. Is that the free festival? Is that a good site to put up there?
Yeah, go through for the Brighton Fringe. We got another website, brightonfringefest.co.uk, but go through freefestival.co.uk, the one that I sent you. That's got what we got on now, and there'll be a contact through that to see what we're going to be doing in October as well.
Okay, great. So check that. And then, Lindsay, what about the Orlando Fringe? What's kind of, it's already passed. You mentioned this Friday event. Is there some opportunity for performers to work with you?
Yeah, we've got a couple of opportunities coming up. The easiest way to find us is on our website. One is an ongoing place where you can leave your pre-recorded shows and connect it so you can get donations to. It's called The Lawn because that's like our central hub and actual Fringe. But you can find that on our website. Our next First Fringe Friday will take place on September 4th, and it's going to be a BIPOC 10-minute play festival.
Oh, great.
We're going to drop the applications for that on Friday. And then we have applications for Winter Mini Fest. I did send you that link, and that is open until September 1st. Right now, we are planning for an in-person festival, but if you live far away and you're not sure if you would be able to travel, apply anyway, because if we don't do that, we'll go digital, so we'll include you. So,
that's great. Okay, I'll make sure to put all that site up. I got one more question before I kind of wrap here from Miles Berman. Do we know how the actual fringes will change when we come back? So I know Brighton may be social distancing. Is there any talk about the after times? And I would actually maybe fold this into one of my last questions, which is what elements of this online streaming are you going to carry over to future festivals? Like, are you just never going to do live streaming again and this was just a stopgap, or do you see elements of this continuing with live shows?
I absolutely think there's going to be an element continuing, even if we get back to exactly the same as before times. I think with the investment that organisations have put into the live streaming and the fact that you can reach a wider audience, there's always going to be the ability to live stream your show, to get your show out there at the same time for people further away to be able to watch it and get tickets for the show. I think it's opened the eyes of a lot of people that this technology exists and can be utilised. And that means that I think it's going to continue in some shape or form. Whether people will still sit and watch a Zoom show if they're in Edinburgh rather than going up the road to see it at a venue, I suspect not, which is good because we want everyone back in the venues. But
we do.
Yeah, I think going forward it's going to exist, and I think for a while it's going to exist around social distancing. So it's also going to help get more people in to see the shows when you can only run at a 30, 40, 50% capacity. But hopefully we return to the before time sooner rather than later, and we can all be crammed back into venues. Yeah,
it's great. Lindsay?
We plan on also continuing with a digital element to everything we do from now on. I think, like what Alex is saying is, we want people to be jam-packed in there, but sometimes they might not be able to travel there, or to be completely honest, like our festival is 9 months away from now, so people may not be ready to come back even if we are.
So
we want to make sure we're not excluding anyone who wants to still be a part of our festival. It'll be our 30th year. So we've been around for a long time, and I've had Fringe fans that are very consistent and very loyal, and we want to make sure they're not forgotten about and anyone can see what we're offering.
Yeah, and compliments to both of you and your festivals to allow these opportunities for artists in these tough times. Once we get back, they're still going to be in tough times, to give them a platform for their art. So I think that's very important, and thank you, both of you guys. So before we wrap up, I want to give you guys a chance to push any promotion, and if you've done it a little bit along the way, and any final comments, any words that you want to share regarding kind of Fringe festivals online.
Great, yeah, shameless promotion. That is what Fringe festivals are all about. Yeah, freefestival.co.uk. We've got performances running every night right the way through to the 30th, obviously in UK time. And yeah, loads of stuff coming up until the end of what would have been the end of the actual in-person Edinburgh Fringe. But yeah, no, come along and see some shows.
Excellent. Lindsay?
I kind of want to just promote all the different fringes coming up that still have festivals. Just, Google your city and add the word fringe next to it and see what comes up, because someone is probably offering different programming near you at any time. And we all need that support because we want to keep our festivals. And keep
absolutely. Yeah, support the festivals and support all the artists that are still trying to put work out there at the moment.
Well, thank you. And to echo what I said earlier, thank you for both doing that, because really you guys are allowing the artists to go out there. Thank you for coming on to What's Next, sharing your secrets and texts and tips. We'll put up if you send me links, we'll put all that up. And thank you audience. Thank you for all the great comments. Special shout out for Miles Berman and Pam Knowles, my wonderful moderators who keep it all clean in the chat room, and David Svengali, who came up with a wonderful What Next logo and our cool intro and soon to be seen exit video. So again, thank you all for coming. I look forward to talking to you more in the aftertime. And remember, a beer, Free Sisters, next year.
12 months time.
Beer. Yeah. I hear Alex's pain. So I'll look forward to that. And thank you all.
I'm getting the beers in.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.